Good evening, everybody. For the record, it is Thursday, August 27th, 2020. It's 5:15 p.m. The City Council is out of executive session. I've called the regular meeting to order. And as always, our first item is a pledge to our flag. So, Councilmember Harold, do you want to lead us over there?
I'd be honored.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Harold. And for the record, we have all 7 council members present tonight and 6 feet apart. First item on our agenda, the consent items, which includes approval of the agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings, and to approve some work done by J&K Earthworks near Lewis and Clark Elementary School.
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve the agenda, vouchers, and minutes from the previous meetings, as well as a motion for the City Council to accept the work performed by the contractor J&K Earthworks on City Project number 1521, Lewis and Clark Elementary Sidewalk Improvements, and further authorize the mayor to sign the final contract voucher.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Huffaker, second by Councilmember Bailey to approve this evening's consent items, including the agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings, and to accept the work performed by the contractor J&K Earthworks on City Project number 1521, the Lewis and Clark Elementary Sidewalk Improvements, and further authorize the mayor to sign the final contract voucher. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we do have one presentation tonight regarding Childhood Cancer Awareness Month Proclamation, and Councilmember Hornby will read that into the record.
Proclamation, whereas pediatric cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday, and whereas 80% of childhood cancer cases are diagnosed only after the disease has metastasized and spread to other parts of the body, and whereas 2/3 of children or childhood cancer patients will have long-lasting chronic conditions as a result of the treatments they go through, and whereas there has been a 24% increase in pediatric cancer cases over the last 40 years, equal to 43 children per day, or 15,780 children a year diagnosed with cancer in the United States. And whereas the National Cancer Institute recognizes the unique research needs of childhood cancer and increased funding to conduct this research, and whereas researchers and healthcare professionals work diligently to dedicate their expertise to treat and cure children with cancer, and whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease, and more must be done to raise awareness and find a cure for all childhood cancers. Now, therefore, I, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor of the City of Wenatchee, do hereby declare September 2020 to be Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Wenatchee, and I encourage all people in our city to join me in this special observance. I witness, therefore, I cause the seal for the City of Wenatchee to be affixed on the 27th day of August 2020. Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor.
Thank you, Travis. And I don't know anyone's, well, obviously no one's here to pick this up because we don't allow people in the council chambers. So Tammy will make sure that gets to the appropriate folks. All right, we have 4 action items tonight. The first being the emergency digester gas piping repair. So Jessica, you got that?
I do. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Jessica Shaw, Deputy Public Works Director for Utilities. And so tonight, I'm not actually requesting any action. I'm just giving you an update on what happened and let you know why we declared this an emergency, and make sure this gets entered into the public record since we did not follow our standard bidding process for this project. So earlier this month, we started to smell raw digester gas, which is mostly methane. It's very corrosive, very flammable. We also noticed that our gas storage system, which is the floating dome on one of the big tanks on the north end of the facility, wasn't working. Started to investigate further and realized that gas was leaking up around the edges of that lid quite quickly. which is in violation of our air quality permit that we have with the state and also a very unsafe condition. So at that point, we determined that we needed to take emergency action to figure out what was going on. In investigating that, we had started a piping replacement project back in 2010, and we'd gotten through phase 1 and phase 2. Never got to phase 3. We'll come to find out phase 3 probably should have happened sooner than later, but I can tell you now phase 3 is done as of today. So
Good.
we discovered that the flow of gas in that section of pipe that had not yet been replaced was a third of what it should have been. And so that was causing some back pressure and causing the gas to leak up around the lid. So first course of action, we looked back at our records, and KRCI had been the contractor for the first 2 projects. In fact, in the first project, they were one of 2 bidders, and on the second project, they were the only bidder. So we thought, well, these guys have done the last 2 projects. Let's see if they're available. They showed up immediately that same day and started working on getting a bypass installed for us. And once we got the bypass installed, that actually the leaking, within about 48 hours, the dome had settled back into place and had relieved that pressure, and we had stopped leaking. So the State Department of Ecology was very pleased with our action and getting things resolved quickly. There was a little bit of delay because we had to wait for parts, but within about 3 days of noticing the leak, we had it stopped. And so then the next step was, of course, getting that piping replaced. And so that was actually finished today. So
Wow, that was quick.
yeah, very, very quick work. Probably the only holdup was we had to wait for pipes and parts to get shipped in. So the contract before you, the cost provided by the contractor was $91,900. The past 2 projects, the first project was about $47,000 and the second one was $127,000. So I feel like even despite the emergency action, it's in the ballpark of what we would have expected to pay for that work. So are there any questions about?
Is this gonna mess up our, perfect score that we keep getting?
Are we going to
That's
get
a different permit.
No.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
We don't get awards for air quality, so.
So you notice the smell's quite a bit different in the last little bit?
It is much improved. Once we
Okay.
got the bypass in, it smelled much better. We did continue to have some odor issues because the bypass had to run outside, so we had to leave some doors open because the
Okay.
piping is inside the building, but we couldn't run the pipe through the building. We had to run it outside, so we had a hose laying on the ground that was bypassing the gas for the last few weeks. So when you leave the doors open of the solids building, it's stinky. And
Okay.
so, but we have the doors closed tonight. The piping is done. So I think we're in good shape. So.
Good. So this is basically just to let the council know that I did declare an emergency and we got it fixed.
Yep.
Okay.
And the contract is attached if anybody wants to look at what we did. So,
All right, any questions for Jessica? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
All right, Jeremy, get us up to date on the digester.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. I'm Jeremy Hoover, Senior Utility Engineer. Here to talk about the digester project. As you know, we have some older digesters. They've had various forms of problems. This particular project is for the construction of digester number 4. The project was awarded to HDR. They have been doing some work for us for, I guess, about a year and a half now. As part of the initial investigation, we determined that there were some equipment that would not meet current fire protection codes. So as part of that determination, we found that we had to build an ancillary building outside of the existing solids handling building in order to relocate a bunch of equipment. Once this was decided, we went to go into the 30% design level, and we identified in that process a bunch of equipment that was going to have to get relocated in order to move the equipment that we had to put in the new building. So we had to put new equipment into the building. So we're talking about pumps, we're talking about piping, we're talking about the original controls that we knew we were going to end up having to relocate, which date from the early 90s. So those have to get brought up to code. That's one of the, or up to modern standards. The boilers will have to be installed in the new building. There's basically a bunch of features that are going to have to be included in order to make everything work correctly. The consultant has additional efforts that they're going to need to put out in order to achieve a functional design. So they're asking for additional compensation to the tune of about $200,000. I have the additional budget amendment in front of you that reflects the anticipated level of additional construction for all the new equipment that will be put into the new building. The original budget was approximately $9.8 million, and the proposed budget, which includes HDR's fees, staff time, additional costs for the equipment, puts the entire budget around $11 million. So what I'm putting in front of you is a recommendation for the City Council to authorize the mayor to sign supplement agreement, sorry about that, number 2, on behalf of the city with HDR Engineering, Inc., for the additional services for the wastewater treatment plant digester 4 project. And if you have any questions about it, I'd be more than happy to give you any level of detail about them that you would like.
We did talk about it at the Finance Committee today. They're anticipating trying to build this next year. Don't know that they're going to get there, but they're thinking. And apparently Ecology has some like 1.5% loan money, because we had thought we were going to go to the bond market to borrow, and they're trying to get it designed in time to apply for some Ecology 1.6% 30-year financing. So, which we better get, because it was supposed to be a $4 million project when we did our comp plan. So
The $4 million number was based on putting in a tank, not necessarily a building and a whole bunch of additional equipment.
I'm just joking with you.
Okay,
I'm just
okay.
remembering the $4 million number in the back of my head.
Things like this do seem to get very expensive, and I had kind of forgotten how high it had gotten, and then now it's even higher. So I realize there's very limited companies that can do this kind of thing, and I'm sure that affects the price greatly.
Does this add capacity, or just allows us to treat it more efficiently?
A little bit of both. The issues that we've been having at the plant are related to our solids process as well as some gas processes. The main focus on this one is to be able to take other digesters offline and work on them and clean them and fix them. That gives us a level of redundancy. We will have additional capacity for any additional treatments that we need in the future as well. So technically there is some capacity associated with it, but that's not the main goal of the project. It's basically to bring everything up to a functional level.
Excellent.
And be able to take the old one offline and do something like the repair of the pipe that you guys had to do
Clean it,
while
maintain
it
it,
was
yeah.
still live. Yeah.
Correct. That gives us, it'll give us a lot more flexibility.
Ryan, is the repair work, emergency repair work you just finished, is that basically the same day to keep us operating until the other reasons we'll have to replace it?
The
Replace it with a new one, or
the emergency work.
get to stay?
The emergency work that we're doing right now is on the gas portion of it, which is related to the digester because the digester produces the gas that goes through the pipes that we're in the process of replacing. This segment of piping, as Jessica mentioned, was basically the third segment of that section of gas handling, the gas handling corridor, if you will. So that particular item will not be replaced as part of the digester. We will be extending it because we will have to take the gas from the new digester and plumb it into that same system. But one of the aspects that we're going to be doing is, with some of this new equipment, is being able to utilize more of that digester gas at a lower pressure, so we'll actually be able to take more of it. Think of it like being able to run your tank down to a lower level and utilize that to heat the digester more efficiently than our existing boiler does. There's going to be a significant level of energy savings that we experience as part of the upgrade of the equipment that we're going to be putting in. The mixers, the sludge gas, the sludge heating equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
This is all like a foreign language to me. We could be speaking Hungarian right now. I don't have a clue what any of that meant. I really don't. I just want it to go in the river clean. Yeah,
It's interesting stuff.
it is. It's just, again, it's a whole nother language. All
Your
right, any
Honor, I'll
questions
make
for
a-
Jeremy? If not, I'd have him entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion for the City Council to authorize the mayor to sign consultant supplement agreement number 2 on behalf of the city with HDR Engineering, Inc. for additional design services for the wastewater treatment plant digester number 4 project number 1810.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Huffaker, second by Councilmember Harold, to authorize the mayor to sign the consultant supplement number 2 on behalf of the city with HDR Engineering, Inc. for additional design services for the wastewater treatment plant digester number 4, project number 1810. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right, Brad. Let's talk a little bit about 1% for arts.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brad Posenchak, Finance Director. Got an ordinance 2020-2021, well, lots of 20s in there, 2020-21 for you this evening. Has to do with the 1% of Arts program. When the city completes construction projects, the city's own construction projects, 1% of the construction cost is required to be moved into our art fund for the purposes of art around the city. This ordinance that's being presented does not change that program, and it doesn't change the fact that we're moving 1%, but it clarifies for staff how to perform this 1% calculation. The calculation has been inconsistent. It's bounced around different staff members, different departments around the city to make this calculation. And with changes in staffing over the past couple of years, finance has taken on the actual calculation of the 1%. So we're working with the other departments, gathering all of the construction costs for the different projects, and then trying to come up with that 1% and what that 1% is actually based on. The city code is a little unclear as to how the intricacies of this calculation operate, and so it's been done different in the past. So this ordinance, what we're asking is to adopt this ordinance. There's a couple of changes to make it administratively more simple for staff to make the calculation. At the end of the day, the amount going into the art fund should be relatively the same. There's a couple tweaks. One tweak that will, the tweak where we include the sales tax of the construction contract in the calculation, that will increase the amount contributed to the art fund by a small amount. And then there is the change that will increase the minimum threshold from the project from 75,000 to 150,000. That change will decrease a little bit the amount that will go into the art fund. It will basically offset each other. I've been working with Dave Erickson on this and presented it to the Arts and Parks Commission, and they had no questions or concerns about it. So this evening we're asking council to adopt ordinance 2020-21, amending chapters 1.48 and 1.52 of the city code as it relates to the public art program. Oh, the other funny thing is that as we were looking at this, we noticed that in sections 1.48 and 1.52 of the city code, it had the same thing, or almost the same thing, but with slight differences. And so we're doing away with one because there's no need to have it in two places.
So what was the reason for adding in the sales tax? Was it to offset the minimum going from 75 to 150?
It's basically to make it easier to calculate. So the 1% is being calculated on the construction contract value. We're not calculating the 1% on the total project cost. We're kind of picking and choosing what we want to calculate, or in the past, they picked and chose what we wanted the 1% to be calculated on. So we don't calculate it on the design. We don't calculate it on the right-of-way purchases. It's just that bid award for that construction contract. And at some point in time, it was determined that instead of using the total bid award, total contract value, they would remove the sales tax and then calculate the 1%. And it adds another step administratively to take the invoices that create that total construction contract and then back out the sales tax with the 8.5% that it is now. So it's just another administrative step when this is all an internal calculation. So whether we have the sales tax or not, it's just money to the art fund or not.
Just trying to make it as simple as you can for he and
Yeah,
his staff
it's
to
for
calculate.
simplicity's sake.
And we did spend some time talking about this at the Finance Committee because some council members who've been around longer than others, council members Bailey and Kulas, remember a number of conversations about should we have it, should we not have it? And I think the consensus is clearly to keep it going. So this sort of cleans up staff's ability to do that. What I thought was interesting, and I didn't realize, I learn something new every day. Dave Erickson is getting ready to do Lincoln Park, and inside Lincoln Park is going to be a new band shelter, and that's going to be paid for with his art money. I sort of thought art money was like making the building prettier and our fixtures downtown and that sort of stuff. But apparently the Parks and Arcs and Rec Commission has decided that these other things would qualify too, and I'm fine with it. I just didn't realize it in my own head. And so he's like, we need to get some projects going because he's trying to pigeonhole money together to redo Lincoln Park and redo the band shelter. So at some point, Councilmember Kulis and I talked about this idea that, should we have a little bit more role as a council in terms of what projects are being spent with the art fund or not. So I think that's for a further discussion, I think, but it seemed reasonable to make this adoption now to make it easier for staff, and then we can have, and Rob was, he goes, I'm building an $8.6 million digester, and I got to come up with $86,000 out of the sewer fund for art, and I think the consensus is, yeah, you do, because we think that's important. And I know we've sometimes over the years tweaked the numbers and the 75 and the 150 and those sorts of things, but.
Brad and I had a conversation about this, and I think it makes sense that have a whole lot of staff time going through invoices.
Yeah.
That's a way to valuable city resources to do that. I guess that suggested, Mayor, that how the money is spent or what it is spent, I think that's another conversation. But
yeah,
I think we need to have that too, because I'm not as comfortable with that idea of building basically a capital project using the art fund for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's what it is right now, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
have any heartburn over that. I think we need to have that conversation.
and I'm fine with that. I think that's
And it's a good time to have it now that the Art on the Avenues program is fading
Right.
away, which we've purchased quite a few sculptures through that program. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But, Your Honor, I'd make a motion that the council adopt ordinance number 2020-21, amending chapters 1.48 and 1.52 Wenatchee City Code as related to the public art program.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Cuevas to adopt ordinance 2020-21, amending chapters 1.48 and 1.52 of the Wenatchee City Code as related to the public art program. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Facility lease between the museum and the city of Wenatchee. Aaron, you got that? So we're doing this because the museum got an award from the state to remodel one of the exhibits. In order to do that, they had to show they had use of the building for a period of time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's part of it.
Okay.
The other part is that the city has had a joint agreement with the city of East Wenatchee that supports the museum, and included in with that support, the museum occupies the city-owned facility located at 127 South Mission. During this last discussion for the joint agreement, it was discussed and decided that to have a separate agreement for the facility. Thinking at that time it was going to be more like a facility use agreement. But during our conversations with not only with the museum and legal counsel, it was recommended that we produce a lease that encompasses not only the use, the operations, and the maintenance of the facility. So the lease before you ignite captures and documents all of those things, and there's really going to be no change to how it's been operating and or the maintenance, but it documents the responsibilities by each party.
And I take it the rental amount is the same as it's always been?
Correct. And then there is no financial impact to either party with it. So we're recommending that the council approve the lease and authorize the mayor to sign. Is there any questions?
So the Museum and Cultural Center was, I think it was about $285,000 capital budget allocation from the legislature. And to accept that, they need assurances that they're going to be in the building. And the plan is to update the what's now the performance hall into a community gathering place with some significant audio-visual technology enhancements and whatnot for the money. And so, it's one of those things that the agreement's been okay, but the people that do the grant contracts are requiring a little more substantive substance in our agreement, the city's agreement with the Museum and Cultural Center.
It sounds like we're killing two birds with one stone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, it's just we got to get them show that they're going to be in the building long enough to make the
Yeah.
grant work, and so.
And the museum board has approved this at their last meeting.
All right, any questions for Aaron? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that the council approve the lease between the Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center and the city of Wenatchee and authorize the mayor's signature.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey, to approve the lease between the Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center and the city of Wenatchee and authorize the mayor's signature. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Mayor's report. I'm not sure exactly what I have on my plate. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the CARES funding. As you know, we got slightly more than $1 million, whatever that was, 4 or 5 months ago. We've reimbursed ourselves and done some stuff. We have, according to Brad, $230,000 or so left. We have till the end of October to spend that. So we know Councilmember Huffaker has talked a little bit about trying to get some of that in the business community. So we got to make some decisions, I think, relatively quickly, although I think Laura was told today that to expect another award of CARES funding and to have the date moved to December 31st. December 1st, excuse me. So we may have bought ourselves a little bit of time. We'll be probably hopefully hearing in the next week or so about what additional amount is coming. So I do want to, we talked a little bit about the Finance Committee today, and, I think the port has done a really good job with the CDBG money and the other monies they've got. And these are some, $5,000 and $10,000 grants. I think the city of East Wenatchee's had a hard time getting theirs out there, just not enough businesses applying, and has really sort of struggled to make that happen. So I don't know what your guys' pleasure is. I don't think we need to know now, but I look at the businesses that aren't open, and I'm going, oh, the theater isn't open. I don't know when they're ever going to open. And is 5,000 enough, or is 30,000 the right number? I mean, I don't know how you sort of look at, you've got a number of gyms in this town that aren't open and aren't going to be open. Well, then, quite frankly, have a number of gyms that are open and shouldn't be open. But so I don't know what the right, if we're going to go back to the port and have them do some work, I don't know how many businesses have gotten, City of Wenatchee businesses have got money through CDBG or through the county's CARES money, but I got to be more than 100. Yeah. So, I mean, Ruth and I worked on the first group with some funding. That was the governor's money. Then their CDBG money was stuff that you and I had worked on with the county money. So, I don't know what your pleasure is. Certainly don't want to waste any of it. Whether we do our own application, I think we should probably wait a little bit until we get this next letter. Maybe Laura will send an email out to you all saying, hey, this is how much we got in the time frame, so here's the total. As Councilmember Kulas and I talked, restaurants are doing okay right now because they can be outside, but
Not all, though.
not all.
When it gets
But-
cold.
But by November,
Yeah.
outside ain't happening anymore,
Yeah.
and we're going to see one of these sort of, and so are they going to need another pop of money, right, to sort of keep them? So But we're also got December 1st and it takes time to get this money out in the system. It just doesn't happen overnight if we're doing application processes. So I think we got to start thinking about what that might look like.
Did the port have more people apply than they had money to hand out, or?
I think the port probably didn't, I don't think every business that applied through the port got money. I'd say most of them did, but not all of them. And they were some 5s and some 3s and some 10s. I think they had a $10,000 limit on one and a $5,000 limit on the other. Yeah, I'd have to go and talk to my brother and say, I just know East Wenatchee's having a hard time. They gave them whatever they had and gave them I don't know if it was a $5,000 or $10,000 limit, and they didn't have enough businesses apply for it. So East Wenatchee's had a hard time getting it out into the system.
And I wonder if some of that is just the word isn't getting out to the people that need to know. Or-
Yeah, or the application's too complicated, and there is review stuff, like checking your ID numbers, making sure you paid all your taxes. I mean, they do a little bit of due diligence to make sure that everything's sort of up to speed on things. So anyhow, I don't, be interested to see what the next number is, and be interested to see, I think Brad thinks we've just about tapped out everything we need between the buildings and wages, maybe a little bit more, but not a lot more. So just something to think about.
Well, I think it definitely will make a difference on what the next number is, if there is a next number.
Yeah.
If there's not that much, if there's only a few $100,000 left to give out, then maybe somehow we could use the port's application process that they already have in place.
Right.
Maybe pick up some of those stragglers that weren't able to, I don't know whether they just didn't qualify or they ran out of
So that's
money.
the issue. Do you nail the stragglers, right?
Yeah.
Or do you take the one restaurant that got $5,000 and go, if he doesn't get another $5,000, he's not open, and do you
But that kind of says we would have to start our own application process to figure all that out.
or we could
Now
use,
we're going to have staff time involved with that.
possible, or we could use, I mean, I think we have some options to control some of that ourselves if we choose to do that. But I think we need to have some thought about
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Agreed.
And I'm sort of thankful we've waited, because I think this is a time you can be pretty impactful if you get it to the right spots.
Yeah, that money's there and favor to get people's hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I just look at, I'm partial to we're at one point, whatever we are, 8.2, and we're not going anywhere, right? So those businesses that didn't get to open yet because we're not at the right phase probably aren't going to open for a while. And I'm sure I'm missing one besides the gyms and the movie theaters. I'm sure there's something that isn't open, but, and I think it's going to be a long haul before those businesses get open. Sure, Laura, anything else I had?
How about, can you tell us about the DOT property? Did you get in contact with Kevin?
Yes, so
over there?
we've heard from, Laura, do you want to do that? Why don't you come up and sit down?
Okay.
She had a conversation with Kevin about the testing site, or at least an email or something.
Yeah, we haven't reached back out to him, but we did contact him about their interest, and so they want to use the WashDOT site for 12 months as sort of a drive-through site. We need to iron out some details in terms of, do they need electricity? Do they need heating? Because right now the systems don't work. We were planning on demoing those buildings. And then, of course, we also had a potential lease on board, so we need to kind of talk through that piece. But it's for 12 months. Again, they'd be using it for COVID site testing. And so we hope to get them out there to walk the site and make sure that it works for them, because it's really just a shell of a building, and I think their intent is to just drive in, do the testing, and drive out like they were doing at the Numerica site, but we want to make sure it's going to work for them too.
Yeah,
Well,
that's,
that's
so
yeah.
and I think I reported this back, maybe I didn't. So I think I did have, what's that? I did, yeah. So the car dealers decided not to lease. So after all of that work and conversation, I think just trying to survive operating a car dealership during COVID. And as I told him, I said, we need to know what you're going to do, because if you're not going to lease, the buildings are coming down. And he said, Frank, I'm not going to lease. I'll figure something else out. So we've been working down the path of taking the buildings down. I think even Matt's been getting some preliminary bids and working on that sort of stuff in the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks since I had that conversation with Tony. So at this point, our plan was to knock them down. I went by the Bridgeport. Are they doing testing of the whole community? Is that Bridgeport? Pateros?
They're going
It's
to,
Bridgeport.
Okanagan County is doing countywide, so they've set up.
So I either went through Pateros or Brewster or one of them, and it was just a tent. I mean, there was no building. There was just a tent up, and you
Yeah.
drove in, and there was nothing, no physical structure, probably a porta potty somewhere that I didn't know about. But I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't much.
That's all they're doing in Tri-Cities as
Yeah.
well. They're just using a big parking lot with tents.
Yeah,
Same up in Twist.
yeah. Yeah. So maybe they don't care if the buildings are there, and they just need a place to put
I think
up a
they
tent.
just like the structure and the cover of it, so
Yeah.
that they can easily organize folks, but we wanted to make sure before we,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, so they were looking at the Maple Street Fire Department building there, but Confluence decided that it would probably be cheaper to do it at the DOT. It's better location, certainly more visible for,
Right.
you know, it's just more conducive and,
Yeah.
and less expensive.
Yeah, and you get more vehicle queuing on that property than you could at Maple Street.
Yeah.
They'd be out in the street.
Yeah.
You can queue them all on that property, yeah. Line them up and run them however you did it, yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll see how that works. We obviously won't do anything until we get your guys' approval. We get a little bit more idea from, but it would delay us. I mean, depending on what they decide to do, it could delay us a year in terms of what we're trying to accomplish out there. So we got to think about
Mhm.
both of those sort of things.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know that I have anything else. Council members?
Did you want to talk about the homeless meeting?
So we had a homeless meeting. I don't know. How'd you think it went?
I thought it was probably one of the better meetings.
Okay.
I was pleased that the counties, if we invest this money from the Department of Commerce for designing a facility or finding a facility, and then we don't open one, we have to pay it back. And the counties did agree that Wenatchee would not be on the hook for that. Otherwise, we would be.
Yeah. So we really had the conversation was, that grant we got, $600 and some thousand. If we decided to spend it and we don't build a shelter, then the county said they would agree to use their homeless dollars to reimburse us. So that's good. But the idea of, if we're going to build a nice one, it's going to cost money. And if we're going to operate it, it's going to cost money. So are you willing to do the 1/10? They ran for the hills, right? So then it's like, well, no, we only want a 20-bed facility because we think we can build it for cheaper or get it for cheaper. And then we can maybe pigeonhole some money from other programs and because God forbid they're not interested in doing the 1/10, both county-wide. So I think they made that pretty clear. They may be willing to do an advisory vote, but that wouldn't be for another year from now. Really no inclination that they were willing to do that to help with that problem. So I think that sort of shows us what we have to deal with at this point. The end of next month, is that right, September 30th, that they're done and we can do our own if we want? I've heard some of my friends in the downtown that said they'd be willing to support that if it would help with some of the issues we're having downtown with some of the homeless population. And I think, quite frankly, that's another discussion. And I think the discussion we had offline a little bit was, I personally believe that one of the reasons we have the problems we have here is because Lighthouse Ministries is down there feeding everybody. And we know they get on buses and they come over here and they say, go 2 blocks south of and they'll feed you. And you go down there every morning and they're lined up and they go back to their spots.
That brings up an interesting question, and this just may be a pipe dream. But these people come in here because they've been bused over here.
Yep.
and They've been sent by Seattle or Olympia, whatever. Isn't there some kind of legal way we can say you don't qualify for services because you're not a resident of this county?
You can't, the religious community can do whatever they want to do, Linda. We don't have any authority over that. So if they want to continue to provide meals and cause problems that are downtown, they can do it, right? It just puts pressure on, think of the issues that we're causing with downtown business because they think they're being helpful. they're helping a certain set and they're hurting another set, but they won't believe they're hurting the other set. So the religious community can do just about anything they want to, and so they don't accept the dollars through our homeless programs because they don't want to abide by those rules, and yet they're now causing problems in our downtown by feeding whoever gets shipped over from Seattle or Tacoma or Everett or Edmonds or wherever they're coming from. Travis is the list because they all get on his bus. So again, it's just an issue we're going to have to try to figure out how to deal with. But I think we got our groundwork from the homeless meeting as to what they would be willing to do and not willing to do.
I thought that was good.
Yeah. Anything else, council members?
Are we going to do anything with the farm workers' safety? All the letters that we've been getting from everybody?
So that's a sort of a county-wide, the health department's got the same ones. I know they're working hard to do the things, and I know there's rules for those folks. I'm not sure what we can do other than express our concerns to the health department and those employers that are doing that. I'm not sure from a city perspective, unless you wanted to require me to write a letter to somebody. I know it's an issue. I know we have way more of the COVID positive tests in the community that's working, the farm workers. So if you direct me to do something, I can. I think our job is to let the county health officials know that we're getting these and that we're concerned and make sure they're doing the things that they can do to help. And I've gotten a lot of emails on the homeless situation and some of the parking. So it certainly sounds like maybe we've got a little loophole we can work on to do some stuff down there. And I get calls from Linda Haglund pretty regularly about the stuff in downtown and Linda Herald as well. And so it's just
I'm getting calls from other business people within the community too.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else is.
Yeah, no, it's just, yeah, it's, so it sounds like we have a way to remove some of the vehicles. I don't know that we have a solution for the sort of homeless population that's sleeping down by the river. And I know Glenn's talked about maybe doing a cleanup project with our staff and the county staff and some other folks and just do a notification and go clean up the river. We'll have to get permission from the PUD to do it. Problem is you got to do it weekly. It can't just be a one and done. You got to get in there and do it regularly to a point where they decide that that's not a place they want to be hanging out because you go clean it up for them all the time. But first things first, let's get those vehicles sort of moved if we can. And so, by the way, I authorized to spend some money to get them towed. Hope you guys are okay with that. Yeah. We still have, Steve King still have a budget authorization. Can we use his account? We spent it 4 times over? Did you see what I did? All right.
I was wondering why you had that up there.
Just to see if anybody noticed.
I didn't. What is it?
Oh. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? We don't meet next week, right?
Right?
Okay.
2 weeks.
So see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.